Good. So, welcome all. To give a little bit of background about me, I'm a coach. Before my life as a coach, I was working for PwC as a finance person. So I always loved the the consultancy part of it. But what I was experiencing again and again as a consultant was people basically know what to do. You tell them what to do, and they, after a while you come back, nothing has changed. So what I really love about coaching is it is the part that really makes people move ahead. So in like 15 years ago or something, I just recognized that I really love being on the consultancy part, but not in the finance industry. So I just moved to the people parts of the story. And since then, I'm a coach. I'm coaching, doing executive coaching. I'm doing, different levels of people in the organizations I coach, but also we're going to discuss today also a little bit about it, is in SparkUs, we have a digital platform to coach people. And I'm going to talk about like, how do we use the digital in coaching? What is out there in the market? What is our approach? What are the other approaches? So especially in this period where everything is going more and more digital, we are going to also include a little bit about that. But what I really got excited when I first had the meeting with Anna Maria was, she said something about like, we're talking about coaching in a more broader way, not just a quick fix solution. So maybe just have a conversation around that. So that just gave me a lot of energy. I just want, hello, somebody else has joined us. Hi, Marta. Hi, Marta.
Hi, I'm so sorry to join so late.
No, not at all. We just
I'm very sorry.
Round of getting to know each other. So I'm just going to finish my words, and then I'm going to give the microphone to you so that you can introduce yourself to the group.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so in my case, I it was one Sunday, I just sat down and started doing this cheat sheet. The more I did it, the more I got excited for this session. So I'm very excited to share it with you, all of you today. But I'm going to start with a more broader, like, what is coaching kind of an experience. So I just wanted to know where all of you is in that sense. And I heard a number of times that you're doing with baby steps of coaching. And that reminds me of the very first training I got. And the trainer told us like not to consider ourselves as baby coaches because our clients really need us as we are. So I would just encourage all of you who just feels like I'm just starting to, go out and just try it out. Yes. So Marta, hi, welcome to the group. I just asked everyone, what's your role and what do you want to, what brought you here tonight for this event?
Hi, sorry again for being late. My role at TSH, so the student hotel, is I'm working as a learning and development manager.
Okay.
Is a pretty young team. And what I'm looking for out of this, let's say, webinar, well, actually, I don't really know, because how to use coaching in your L&D strategy. Well, actually, we have a strategy, and I'm very curious about how I can use coaching in this strategy. And especially, sorry, I'm in the subway, as you can hear.
No problem. We are just having the journey with you.
Yeah. And actually, our strategy changed a lot. This is the type of company, kind of a startup.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very curious how I can use coaching in the L&D strategy. So I don't really can tell you something specifically.
Okay. Great. So the subject somehow made you come here. That's good. Good to know.
Exactly.
Great. So so let's start with the basics for those who are relatively new to coaching. I'm just going to just a second change my screen. Yeah. So let's start with the very basics of what coaching is. So when we're talking about coaching, the first description that I brought is the general description of the International Coach Federation. It just says like it's partnering with clients. In this case, coaches, we're talking about clients is a word used for that, in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal or professional potential. The words that I really made bolder is in coaching, there is no hierarchy. There is partnering, there is getting into the arm of the other and just really helping the other one to be empowered, to thrive. So that's the main focus. And it's a thought-provoking process, which means we're just not providing the solutions to the other party, but we are helping them to give birth to those thoughts in the coaching process. And the very last bit that I really made a bold is the potential, because there is always the belief that the other party has a potential, even a bigger potential that they're just showing right now. So these are the very basics that I'm going to refer to when we're going forward in the process. So most of the time, coaching is known to be a skill set. When you go to coaching trainings or people talk about receiving coaching, being coached, they are generally the thought of like, yes, there is a deep listening. You just really listen to the person, not the stories they're talking about, but really like who this person is really. So it's really going deep down into the listening mode. That's one thing. The other thing that is always, whenever you talk about coaching, that comes up is the questions, the powerful open-ended questions we use. And of course, once we ask the questions, there is also the reflection on the other party to really sit down and think about themselves. So it's not giving, ready-made answers, but just giving the questions and having that reflection time. And there's the other skill set, which is the, either giving feedback or giving messages. And here we also use the term like being a mirror in front of the person to, give them not maybe our interpretation of things, but how things look from the other side, make them be aware of themselves is also what we are doing. And also, talking about feedback, most of the time people focus on the negative feedback, but there is always a lot of acknowledgement in the coaching process, showing people what they have achieved so far, what they can do more in the future. So it's always very much future focused, but also at the same time, saying like, yeah, you have this strength, why don't you use it more? So there's always the acknowledgement piece also there. So these are generally taught in the coaching trainings. And when people talk about coaching, they mostly refer to listening, questioning, and all these other elements. But what is also there, which is really at the bottom, at the core of coaching, is the mindset. If you don't have the mindset, you don't really listen, or you just ask questions, which recently a participant in a training told, like, yeah, I received coaching before, but it sounds very plastic to me. If you don't bring the mindset into the coaching, the questions really feel plastic, like you're taken out of a question bag or something. What are we talking about in terms of the skill, the mindset? The basic mindset, as I said, is the belief in the potential. So it's very much linked to the growth mindset that I just assume, maybe I shouldn't assume, but like most of us know about this concept, not being in the mode of like, oh, this is fixed, this is who I am and I cannot change. Most of the time people have that, hiding behind, assessments and stuff, saying like, yeah, I'm a blue, I can't change. I just came to this life like this, with these learning from the university, and like, how can I grow? So that's what we call a fixed mindset. But with the coaching, we have this idea of like, yeah, okay, so you're here, but there is a lot more to go. So there is a lot of more potential. So where do you want to go? Where do you want to grow yourself? So there is always the growth mindset as a basic. But when you're also giving coaching, the other part is there is also accountability. So it's not only about exploration, asking questions, etc., but also keeping the person accountable. Like, what are the actions you're going to take? So it's really very much on one level, very much action focused, very much. That's the part that keeps us actually going forward and bringing the growth really. And the other thing is when we're coaching, we're not knowing. We're just in the mode of not knowing. So it requires some level of humbleness and requires a level of curiosity. If you don't have the curiosity, all the questions you're going to ask would be, as I said, plastic. And this bit especially is very much linked to what we're going to talk about in the few slides further about a coaching culture and leader being the coach. So when we're talking about leader as a coach, we're thinking about leaders not sitting on their level and saying like, yeah, I know everything, I know the solution to it, yeah, I know the problem. So there is always, when you're getting into the coaching mindset, there is always this not knowing and the humbleness of not knowing, and being open and saying like, yeah, I don't know, let's figure it out together. So especially in this period of COVID, where we basically have no idea what's going to happen, even in a few days' time, that nobody has such an experience, and we all know that such changes are going to come. We need that approach more and more in our cultures, in our leadership styles, etc. So this is the basic mindset we're talking about. So when we bring it next to the L&D process, so we're all aware of, I guess, the 70, 20, 10. Just make a noise if you don't know it.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. As
okay.
In, I know like the 80-20 kind of 20% of what we do accounts for 80% of the results, or
no, it is like for the learning to really happen. We most of the time think about learning as like going to a training, but that just makes what you learn in trainings is just 10% of the process. 20% is what you receive out of mentoring, out of social learning, out of coaching. So it's learning from others is 20%. And the 70% is learning on the job while you're doing it really. Learning by doing, let's say. So once we have this model, most of the time coaching is very much fixed in this 20%. So it's part of the social learning. You're learning or through a mentor, or you're learning while you're being coached. And that requires, as we talked about previously, on the side of the coachee, on the side of the person that is learning stuff, a level of preparation in terms of like what they really want to learn, what they really want to achieve coaching on, and also some level of accountability. If they come into coaching sessions, speak, and just go out and do nothing about it, then it will be just a nice conversation and nice chat. So we require both. We require them to really think about what they need and what they can benefit from, but also they also need the accountability. 7 to 10, yes, I can share that with you. Yeah. So Josephine asked on the chat box if there is a specific research on the 70, 20, 10. Yeah, I can share you that. So the other version is, most of the time we spend most of our efforts on the 10%, which is the trainings. And it can be like courses, workshops, e-learnings, whatever. And we all know that for them to really sink in, people need to have a learning agility, some level of curiosity about the subject matter. Otherwise, they just go into trainings, listen to them, nice coffee chats around it, but nothing really happens. And on the flip side of it, if they're really motivated, if they really want to learn, even though the organization doesn't provide them with courses and workshops and etc., they find a way to learn about it. They go on to, YouTube, TED Talks, they receive trainings or Coursera or whatever. So people, if they have the learning motivation, they can actually learn much more better. And the last bit, the 70, is, as I said, learning on the experience. But for the experiences to turn into learning, that requires a purpose of like, why am I doing this? They need to have some kind of a connection with the work that they're doing. But also, they need to be on the growth mindset, as I said. They shouldn't be on the victim mode, saying like, oh, this thing happened, poor me. They need to have that feeling of like, yeah, this didn't work. Why? A level of questioning. Like, what did I learn from this experience? What will I do differently next time? So having that notion of the questioning is also very much needed. So if you're looking to coaching as a tool only for our L&D processes, it is just the 20%, as I said. So if it's just like, this person needs coaching, so I'm going to, arrange a coach for them, and they're just going to, have their coaching sessions. If we consider coaching as a tool, it's just stuck with this 20. But if we talk about the skill set and the mindset, it's actually integrated in all the 3 levels of learning at work and also the learning agility. So if we change our minds into coaching in a broad, if you look at it in a broader sense, it actually affects all 3 levels. Do we have any questions until this moment? So I'm just going to go back to the group. Is it clear so far? Any questions? I got the question about 70, 20, 10. So, I mean, it's something I use very regularly. I totally forgot where I got it from, but it is mostly used. So I'll share that one. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I see why you're saying that it touches especially on the 70, because for me, this reflection to learn, if you're just a person very focused towards doing and achieving and very forward looking and like learning, moving, you have sometimes the risk of not really stopping and reflecting.
Yes.
But if your manager or your leader has this kind of coaching mindset, then this is the person that stops you every once in a while, hopefully in your weekly one-on-one, and helps you through their questions reflect on what just happened and what you just did, and actually makes your learning real in a way, or it brings it back into your active mind. Or
yeah, exactly. Especially if you're talking about there are many young companies here, as I call fast companies here, especially in the startup zone or scale up zone. We have a lot of experience. Actually, we learn by doing and just failing and redoing, failing and redoing. So if we have that fixed mindset, then it's like, oh, a failure. But if we all have that reflection period, then we can learn and grow all together. So that's the general way of looking at it. So I'll just switch to the next slide. So just talking about this, you probably all know about Peter Senge, the guy about the learning organization. But this is exactly what he says. Like, if we want to continually expand our capacity, that's the way that we need to all have that patterns of thinking. We need to nurture all those patterns. Like you're saying, like our managers can do it, we can do it all by ourselves. But also we need to have what we can achieve together kind of a moment in it. And that's where it comes, like it's not just one person that has to be out of that victim mindset, but the whole organization has to have that notion of like, let's learn together, let's create together, let's fail and learn together as well. So all that collective aspiration is very much required for the whole organization. So so when is the sign, like which signs can I check to say like, okay, so we need coaching in the organization? The first sign to check is obviously most of the time it's the engagement surveys. So it can be the overall engagement rates, like if the people are not really engaged in the organization, it might mean that they're just being, just somebody is telling them to do what to do, and they don't really have the emotional connection to the work. So if the overall engagement results are low, it is probably a sign that the coaching culture is not there. There are a number of researches by the Coach Federation that links that engagement with the coaching culture. If there is coaching culture, the performance of the organization and the engagement results are generally much more higher. And I can share also those researches with you. And there can also be specific questions about coaching in the engagement surveys. Sometimes we see automatic questions that just ask, I know that there is one in Gallup's, and I think there is one in Ann Hivett's engagement survey asking about, is my manager coaching me? Does anybody in the company somehow support my development? So there can be those kind of specific questions that you can encounter and say like, so if these results are low, maybe we need something to do in terms of coaching in the organization. It can also be about the employer brand perception of your organization. Most of the time people talk, really. They can just be like, yeah, don't go there, they don't develop you or something like that. So they just, they just hire you and just tell you what to do. Especially when we're talking about even younger generations joining the organizations, coaching is generally something asked for by the young generations. Maybe not as a, receiving coaching from a professional, but also in terms of like receiving coaching from your manager. Exit interviews can tell us about that, that people are just leaving the company because of that. And there can also be certain transitions in your organization that require some coaching processes, like a merger and acquisition is happening, and you need people to learn a new culture or integrate different cultures. It could be a downsizing going through the organization where you want to support the people who are leaving in terms of what they're going to do in their next career moves, but also in terms of the ones that are left behind might need some support, emotional support. And that can also be the flip side. There can be a very fast growth in the company and people need to learn about things as quickly as possible. There can be a culture change, like an innovation or any kind of culture change that you want to have to bring company to, to be maybe for more future ready, etc. Or there can be a crisis period going on where you want people to sit down and really think about how to handle this situation. And last but not least, your own experience may also tell you to bring coaching more to the organization. I've coached a lot of HR people in the past who were complaining about the company's culture, about its effects on them. And I was saying like, okay, so you are in the role of changing that. Why don't you use your own experience to change the whole organization's culture? So sometimes our own materials, we are the materials of that change as well. And if we are lucky, we can also have an ongoing effort in the organization to maintain a coaching culture. So the organization might already be in the level of saying like, yeah, we want to bring this mindset to the whole organization, and it will be a ongoing process in our organization. So those are generally the signs to check. But I would knowing that there are a lot of L&D people in the group, HR people in the group, maybe those are the things that I've encountered so far. Maybe there are some other additions you might want to make, like what else to check, what else in your experience should be on this list.
I mean, I see coaching every time, everywhere when you train people even. So the list can be super, super long.
Yeah. We can add many things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even when you give feedback, I like to use feedback by using coaching instead of giving feedback as a person. So where are we now? What happened?
Point,
so asking questions instead of telling them what happened. Yeah,
great point. Actually, I'm giving something I totally forgot. You're right. As a part of communication, it is also very much needed. Sometimes I'm giving trainings to technical people who are not necessarily running a team or something, but they're somehow responsible either as agile coaches, or they can also be just running projects, and even using coaching in terms of a communication style, even to understand how the project is going to run is very much relevant. So sometimes we sit down and do like, how would you run a project meeting as a coaching session? Like what kind of a coaching model you would use there, what kind of questions you would ask, is also a good way of looking at it. So yeah, thanks for bringing that. Feedback and communications might also be. Anything else that I maybe missed?
Basically, the entire concept of leadership, right? I think that nowadays when we think of leadership, this is something like a basic skill that we expect from a leader to have. The ability to ask questions, the ability to guide the team and not tell the team what they should do, the ability to inspire them and support them and so on. And I guess it's a very big part of being a good leader, to be able to be a good coach. And I also believe, linking it back what you say, the newest generations, they don't expect that micromanager, the manager that has all the answers, etc. And they expect someone to support them and to guide them. And also in many cases, you have leaders leading a cross-cultural team, and then the leader per se doesn't even have the necessary skills or knowledge himself to give the answer to that potential person. And then the only tool that he has is to ask the right question and support the person to find the answers by themselves, for example.
Yeah, very good point, really. Sometimes they're totally lost in the culture or in that organization even. And when you're talking about it, I also remember a friend of mine, she's an interim manager. And she was saying, like, I am now in my new post leading a legal team, and she's not a lawyer herself. And she was saying, like, but my role is not to know the answers. They're already experts on their field. I'm just basically bringing, the right questions and, coaching them. So if you take someone from a total another field and bringing them as a manager it's really obvious that what we're really looking for in the manager is not knowing it's not that, we just hired already the expert, so we don't need the manager to be the expert. So that's also very much relevant. I love this description of a coaching culture is where people don't take instructions, but they take responsibility. I really love that differentiation. Otherwise it's like I'm this soldier asking for my my guide to just give me the instructions, and the more and more we don't need it anymore, because if we can just write down flow charts and explanations, they just turn into what's the word, AI. So it's like, if we can just write down flow charts for the work, we might also use robots for that instead of real human beings. So the more and more we don't need that kind of a leadership. So yeah, good point, really. So I'm just going to move, if no other comments. So, but even though that's the case, we just know that it is required for everyone, for, you know, for a larger group. What generally happens is coaching is very much spared for a select few. So it's like we just give it to the top management or just some selected, you know, talents that we have. So we're not able to bring it to a larger mass in the organization. And that's generally because we don't have enough resources of budgets. Sometimes we don't have enough time to prepare people. Sometimes people don't know what coaching is. They just want, you know, ready-made answers. And somebody else joined us, by the way. I'm just going to check who's there. I don't know, someone probably dropped and came back.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, I think so. So the other thing is, since there is coaching confidentiality, it's very difficult to report the process and to assure its quality. So the thing is, like, we are spending all this money to coaching and we cannot really create a report out of it. Especially the more people we try to coach, it really gets into a mess. Even to call people and say, like, did you have your coaching sessions? Even to keep track of that is a mess. So what generally happens for organizations, even though they want to go bigger, there is always this feeling of like, let's not go there. Not even thinking about coaching can be a solution to a large group of people, trying to figure out other ways. Yesterday, I was in a meeting with a client, a potential client, and they said, like, we've done this wonderful talent program, and we did all the 360s, we did all the, you know, assessment centers, and we created development plans for people. And I was thinking at the back of my mind, like, it's good. So that I hope that people also know about their development plans. So like, nobody really comes to the people and asks, like, what do you want to develop? So it's like, we've done all these tests, all these things, but I cannot turn to you and ask, like, what do you really want to develop out of all this? Because that would require, you know, it would complicate things, because it's difficult to report, blah, blah, blah. So that's generally what happens in reality, even though we just know that it works great. So what, in my experience over the years, this is the reach of coaching in organizations. Mostly they start with receiving executive coaching for a few people, generally top management or just some selected special people, and then say, like, this is going well. So we really like coaching. And then let's have some of our HR people, L&D people being trained as coaches. So generally, trained coaches come back to the company. They start coaching a few people, bringing coaching mindset into different applications, having maybe a few coaching processes into trainings, etc. And then there comes a moment saying, like, yeah, we need to bring this coaching idea to the whole organization. So let's give trainings to our managers to be coaches. And that's generally where the situation comes into a flat. This is generally the limit of the coaching culture. Managers go through trainings and they basically don't apply it. And it's like, over there, something is limited. So what digitalization is able to do is to bring coaching to more people. I'm going to talk about a little bit of how do we integrate the digital into this whole process. So what is possible is to bring coaching at scale programs, to bring, you know, one-on-one time with professional coaches more and more. So that's the other level that comes with technology. And even the further level is making managers coach their people based on a digital platform, based on a technical process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like how that's possible. But first, let's talk about how technology helps. Like, what are there out there as what we call as digital coaching? Generally, digital coaching is on two folds. On one level is, will there be, low touch or high touch by the coach or just by a human being, let's say? And do we go scalable, or do we just give it to a selected number of people? When we're going more and more scalable, what is generally out there as digital coaching is chatbots. So there is more open, close-ended questions rather than open-ended. So you select like, okay, if this is that, then I'll go there, kind of a thing. And then at the end, people are advised with some videos. So it's more, I would say, directed learning based on those people's needs. It lacks the human touch, but it at least gives a more personalized solution to the person based on wherever they want to develop themselves. Certain research are there that people start with some enthusiasm. It feels really good at the start with the chatbots. But sometimes after a while, if you don't receive that pat on the back, you're kind of losing momentum. But for really basic things, that really works well. The other bit, there's also one way of using the chatbots as a part of learning and development processes. Like you go through a training, and then after the training you receive a chatbot. And based on whatever you learned in the training, you're receiving maybe additional articles or videos, etc. So it's a blended approach of supporting trainings as well. The other part, when we're talking about digital coaching, is the high touch, but again, select few, maybe more than just one or two people. But there are a lot of matching algorithms out there. I'm going to, in the chat cheat sheet, I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Where basically the main idea is there are a huge number of coaches who made their profiles on the digital platform, and the organization becomes a subscriber to these platforms. And if somebody needs coaching, they also fill out their needs, and the platform matches the coachee with the right coach in terms of development areas, language, location, whatever. So so they start working together. That's also one of the things. The only issue about that is, since it's a bulk number, the budgets are more lower than that was out there without a chatbot like that. Sorry, a matching algorithm like that. But it still requires 8 hours, let's say, of a coaching session to make some impacts. So once we are sitting face to face, we still, or over the platform that they offer, we're still needing a number of hours, a number of sessions. Even though the hourly rates are lower, the number of hours are still like 6 to 12 sessions. But what's easier with these platforms is A, it takes away the burden of matching, and B, it takes away the burden of creating reports, like who met with whom is no longer a phone call to each other, but it's more like you can just see what's happening on the platform in real time. You can take reports, etc. And what we are aiming in SparkUs is we actually started, maybe just to give you a idea about what we do. We basically started with the idea of how do we coach university students, who are a huge number of people that need support in terms of their career choices. So our idea was like, how do we really, without taking away the human element, how do we scale it to huge groups of people? And but in the meantime, we learned how to use it digitally, but we just figured out it's not a good business model. So we switched to B2B and started working with organizations. But what we are aiming is really like, how do we keep the high touch and keep the scalable portion of it? So the next few slides might feel a little bit like I'm talking a lot about the SparkUs platform, but I need to give you the concept behind it, because the cheat sheet actually will give you certain parts for, because it's a new concept in its own right. I need to talk a little bit about like how that works, so that what I'm going to tell in the cheat sheet would make sense. What we are basically doing is a lot about the preparation phase. So we are just giving coachees a place to prepare for the coaching session, and then they come together with their coach. So it's always a blended approach of a digital coaching journey and a human element, which is sometimes a professional coach, but it can also be a mentor. It can also be an internal coach in your organization, or it can also be managers coaching their people. So talking about the managerial support, we're going to come to that. And on the platform, something looks like it. So it's very customizable based on the needs of the organization. And in each of these steps, these are what we call coaching steps. We give them different exercises. Like to make a vision board, for instance, they receive different photos, they select and choose from them, and then we show them back what they've done on the platform, and then on the vision board, and then we start asking open-ended questions like, describe how this future looks like. Then we reflect back what they've written to really read through it, and like, how is it different from today? So there is a lot of elements of self-reflection and self-discovery. And once they're done with all that exercises, we gather a one-page report. They can select and choose from different parts of it and say like, okay, this part I want to share with whoever is coaching me. So if it's their manager, they can also select less parts of it, or if it's a professional coach, they can be more open, bring more information. So the main idea is both parties are getting prepared for the process. Coaches is getting prepared, learning about how coaching works. There is also what we call a coaching literacy. They kind of understand how it feels like to receive those open-ended questions. And there can also be a quality assurance, because we are designing the packages together with the organization, whatever the organization wants that general group to really sit down and think about. That's the part on the coachee side, but also on the coach's side, we can plan ahead the sessions and say like, okay, I'm going to focus on this bit. But what's also relevant, especially if the person that is doing the coaching is not a professional coach, but if they're a manager, if they're a mentor who are new to the process, that report also gives them a guideline about how to run the coaching conversation. And what's also possible is to arrange sessions on the platform, and that bit, the arranging sessions, we're going to talk about it a lot. It's always there in most of the digital coaching platforms. You can arrange sessions on the platforms and also receive some kind of session follow-up forms, action tracking, etc. Once you go digital, it's easier to have that. And it's also possible to receive the project managers or the HR or L&D people, whoever is doing the project, to receive some feedback about the session in real time from the coachee. And what's of course possible once you have the digital area, we have an HR dashboard. All digital platforms have their HR dashboards. So you can see how many sessions are held, how many actions are taken. In our case, we also show like if somebody has completed their digital exercises, so that gives us a feeling of oh, so this person is really, you know, engaged in coaching, and this guy is not engaged at all. And in some of our cases, some clients also choose not to give coaching sessions to those people who haven't completed the exercises, saying like they're not engaged, so why do I make all this investment for this person? So it can also work as a filter for the whole process, but it's really a strategic decision. So the more you include technology into the coaching process, the more you can receive reports and everything. So one of the issues about the ROI, if I cannot show the ROI of the whole process, it's harder to receive budgets. But in this case, once you have digital platforms, it's easier to show what kind of a success is there, let's say, numerical way. Yeah, I already talked about it. So it could be coaches, managers, mentors. So let's come to the final, the most weighted moments. But maybe before just jumping in there, are there any questions? So I'm just doing more trailer about the cheat sheet. Any questions so far?
I have a couple questions I wrote down. Earlier you said some companies invest in managers developing their coaching skills. Mm-hmm. However, the managers don't apply it. What do you think is holding managers back to apply their managing skills?
The question is like, what would it take for them to apply it?
I mean, why? My heart sinks when I hear this. That's why I'm asking, like, what? Why do they not apply their coaching skills? What makes you say that?
A few things. One is they go back to the office. They start asking questions, open-ended questions. I mean, think about these guys who've been very much, you know, giving instructions to people, telling them what to do. And then all of a sudden they got into this training, come back and start asking questions. What generally happens on the coachee side or their employees side is they're like, why is she asking me these questions now? Like, am I being surrogated or something? So like, because the employees generally don't know about the coaching process, that gives them some kind of a, especially if there is a mistrust between the manager and the employees. That's one of the barriers that we came across. The other is managers are generally trained to give coaching, but they don't receive coaching themselves. So if you're talking about a large group of people in that case. So sometimes they don't really believe in the benefits of it, or they're somehow a little bit impatient, like about the process. Like since they have never received those powerful questions themselves, once they ask the question and then there is no answer coming in that moment, they jump to the next question, or they jump to the giving their own solutions or something. So that's also comes in between their coaching process. Once they start hearing from, once they start the experiencing the power of those questions and that power of those silences, it is easier for them to bring that, you know, question and keeping silent and, you know, having that kind of a conversation. So most of the time, so there are these are the two things, and there are also the third case where sometimes they're very much in their non-curious mind, let's say. So they kind of know the answer, but they just ask the questions out of a list and say, like, the typical, when I go to certain companies and if they receive coaching trainings before, managers always like have this little bit of smile in their face and ask each other like, so what do you need? So they just learned it as a very powerful question, and they just like, keep on asking the powerful questions out of their bag, not out of curiosity, but just because they have to ask questions. So it's, those are basically my feeling that it's not being used enough. But I just saw that Lena was nodding her head. Maybe you also have some experience and something to share about it.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance, Ozlem. So I completely agree with everything that you have just said. Like, I can confirm out of my own experience. What I say is that if we want to put it in a big picture, there is a role confusion. A role confusion. So it's a different thing to be a manager. It's a different thing to be a coach. Because I train people who want to become coaches, and I train people who want to get coaching skills. This is a completely different training. And these roles need to be very well separated, because the first principle is about connection, and the second is about curiosity. So connection comes first, and then genuinely curiosity about what does the other person has to say. That's why you are asking the question. But I would go, if I may add, I would go a little bit deeper to go into the role. Like, the person who is in the role of the manager or the role of the trainer is the person who should know everything, has to know everything. So if you take this away from them, the ego is a little bit hurt. Like, what am I supposed to do here? Why am I asking a question? I should know the answer already and guide them. So there is very big role clash, I would say. It's a difficult process. It's not a thing that you do a training course and then everything is magically solved. So I would say it's a long journey for the people who want to really integrate coaching skills in their work.
And Anna Maria also wrote, like, sometimes it's also sometimes a behavioral and mindset change, and it takes time. Yes, and also that's also there. And some of them just drop it, saying like, no, I can't do it. Like, I tried, didn't happen. So there has to be a mechanism to support managers after the training as well. Yes, we're going to talk about that. There has to be some kind of a supervision, and also how do we use the digital platforms also is very much relevant to that. I'm going to talk about that as well. That's actually implement it and learn from mistakes, and go ahead. And Maria said, it's exactly it. So they don't have any feedback when they go back to the daily workplace. So it's really they just go out and try. And it's also a cultural thing, I believe. Like, there is also certain barriers, thinking like, that doesn't work in our company. That's just not the culture. Like, even though I do it, just doesn't work. So recently I gave a training, and we just separated the very last bit about, like, because everybody was so excited about coaching and everything. We said, like, what can take you out of your way? Like, you're so excited, you're just going back and giving all these, you say you're going to do coaching, but what can really take away that motivation? And then we talked a lot about the culture in the organization, etc. So some companies are more open to it. Some are more like, that doesn't work in our culture. That's also something to check. Does it make sense, Monique? Or what else? Yeah?
Makes sense.
Okay. So any other questions? Josephine, I know that we are on the top of the hour. Would you like to grab your sandwich?
Would that fit to have a 5-minute break? Or I can also just bring my laptop with me while you continue. That's
we can have a 5-minute break. And maybe meet in, what time is it now?
11 past.
Yeah, 11. So like 16, we are here like in 5 minutes. Good. Perfect. We are back. For those who just forgot their cameras off. Yeah. And I thought about one more thing for Monique's question. One of the limiting beliefs / things to consider in terms of managers coaching their people is there is always like, yeah, it's great, but we don't have time to coach others. Like we have a lot of like, yeah, it's nice and it's really good in the trainings to do it, but it's really impossible when we're really running ahead of time or something. So it really requires some conversation about how actually it brings them forward in the, like, it might look, it is like as if losing time, but I always give this example, maybe not relevant for Amsterdam people, but when you're talking about Istanbul traffic, it makes very much sense. Like you can just say like, yeah, I have this meeting, and just, you know, go into your car and just start the car and try to go there. But if you just really take that 2 minutes just to check your navigation and see which part of the city is a little bit, you know, traffic, there is a traffic jam, then it actually saves you time. Although it looks like you're just not going to the wheel and just really driving quickly, actually it saves you time, and that's how coaching is actually. So it just makes you slow down so that you can move ahead much more faster. But it really is one of the things that is a barrier. One chat, something on the chats. Yeah, for Amsterdam's weather app. Yes, Maria, thank you. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, let's come to the most wanted. So the question starts with, I started the cheat sheet with the question of like, who or what do we want to develop? So that's the basic starting point, I would say. And the cheat sheet looks like something like this. I'm going to send you as a PDF file at the after this call. They're going to go into the details of each one, but it basically has 2 layers. One is, it could be like 1 point intervention we're looking for. Like we want to develop an individual and we want to develop a team. That's the point-by-point interventions, and that's generally where organizations think about involving coaching automatically, saying like, okay, so this team has an issue, we're going to hire a coach. This individual has to develop, we're going to hire a coach. But there's also the systemic interventions that we can make. And I divided them into 3 groups. One is, it could be a group of some selected people, like all our talents, all our technical guys, or it could be our leaders. So it could be like a group of selected people, first-line managers, whatever. So it could also be a level of like leadership development. And it can also be that we need to do something for the whole culture. So we need to be working for the whole organization. So I'm going to go into details of each one of them one by one. So the first level of interactions, that is like 1 point interactions. I'm going to make my screen smaller. So first I start with, yeah. So let's say for an individual we're talking about, what do we need to develop? Is it a technical capacity, or is it a behavioral change we're looking for? If it's a technical capacity, then the question comes, is it a common knowledge thing that they can be supported by training? So you can have LMSs, in-class trainings, webinars, etc. Or is it not a common knowledge, but something specific to the organization, or it should be like tailor-made? There you can bring a mentor to the picture. So it can be an internal mentoring, or it can also be external mentoring support. So I put down over there a little bit of, over here, some names that you can check with. And generally, chatbots also support this bit a lot. So you can also talk about the coaching bots also in this area where people are getting more personalized training. So it can also be somewhere over here, maybe somehow over here as well. So if you're talking about behavioral change, again, the next question is like, do they need to hear some advice from other people who has been there? Like, do they really learn from someone who has the personal knowledge about the main situation? There we go to mentoring rather than coaching. And if we just say like, no, we don't need to bring any additional advice, we just want this person to learn about it themselves, find their own solutions, then we need to go to one-on-one coaching. And we can go to an internal coach if the organization has an internal coaching pool. We can hire an external coach, where I would suggest you then hire a coach either ICF or EMCC accredited. So it might be new terms to some of you not. So these are international organizations who really, I always give the example of like, they give you the designation of associate professor, a professor, etc. So they look into your coaching quality, etc. So you can just check these guys' website, and also you can go to digital coaching platforms with matching algorithms. BetterUp is very well known in the US. They got huge investment, and they're really doing a lot of stuff to bring up good coaches together. In Europe, Coach Hub is known more, and there is also Move On that is there, that is also well known. So you can also, hire a platform for people to go through behavioral change one by one. So if you're coming to the team, if you want to develop a team, you can then check one thing at the start. Is it an issue specific to this team, or is it a cultural thing? If you think that it is cultural, just use that team as a pilot for a big culture change project. And we're going to come back to how do we support a culture change through coaching at the end. So I'm just going to, if you had the cheat sheet with you, this go to corporate culture would just then bring you to another layer in the whole cheat sheet. But if it's not a cultural thing, if it's a specific thing, then the other thing to check is like, is it about the team that we want to support, or is this issue really caused by the team leader? If it's a team leader, going back to just support one person thing, so we can just support them with one-on-one coaching. But if it's a team, then you can support them with team coaching. Again, I would advise you to go to an external coach to do the to give the support of ICF and EMCC accreditation. I wouldn't advise an internal coach for a team coaching, because there are lots of dynamics going on in team coaching, and internal people are also part of that dynamic somehow. So I would advise for team coaching to go for external coaches. So that's the 1-point interventions, and generally very much talked about when we're talking about coaching. So if we come to systemic support, as I said, there are 2 layers. It could be a group of selected people, it could be the leadership, it could be the culture change. If you're talking about a group of selected people, the first thing to look at is, let's see, do they need support in terms of technical or behavioral skills? And if it's technical skills, the first question is it then common knowledge? Or if it's a behavioral skill, do they need to hear advice? Very much really relevant to what I said for individuals, but then there are approach little bit changes. So it could be both as well. So sometimes organizations have both technical support, technical skills development, and behavioral skills development at the same time, then we generally advise them to choose a blended approach of the two. If we're going to the technical support, the first thing is, if it's, again, like if it's a common knowledge, go for trainings. If it's not common knowledge but technical issue, support them with mentoring. And support with mentoring, here comes the main question. Do you need to give them a framework for support? Or do you just need you know, a tool to see if the mentoring sessions are happening or not? If you're going through if you really need a framework, like if all of these, let's say you're mentoring your first line managers and you want all of your first line managers to sit down and think about delegation, feedback, situational leadership, if those are the topics that you want your first line managers to all think about, then I would suggest don't leave it to the mentors in the organization, because they might not have the skill set to really to question those areas. But they generally have the skill set. If you bring them, if somebody, the mentee has thought about those areas and they want to sit down and talk about them with the mentor, then the mentors are open. But they don't automatically bring out those issues to their mentees. Sometimes it just turns into a nice conversation. So I would say like, if you really want your mentees to think about certain basic things, try to give them a framework to prepare. And the other question I have, which I'm going to come like how many people they are, but that's the last bit. What we're doing in terms of mentoring support is we're giving the digital journey that I talked about previously. So we're giving them the exercises, the mentees the exercises to go through the preparation, and then there is a session tracking form, an action tracking based on that, and also an internal mentor. That's generally what we do. We can also give trainings to the mentors and mentees, etc. But it's generally the structure is like that. The main question that I said, is it less than 50 or more than 50 people we're talking about, is if you have more than 50 people to match, it is a mess. So I would say also have a matching algorithm for the right people to be matched with the right mentor. If it's less than that, don't ever deal with an algorithm, because at the end of the day, even though there is an algorithm, you're going to again have a final check if that matchings were okay. So for like 10 people or something, you can do it by the eye, and you wouldn't need an algorithm in that case. So that's one of the things. So if we come back to the question of, if you don't need a framework, then you can have a internal mentor and a session tracking platform. There are many of that. And I know that some companies even do it over SharePoint. So even though it's not very user friendly, it can be done. Even some companies just use Excel to keep track of the sessions. Generally Google Docs, let's say. So people come in and just write down that their sessions happened. But there are also other organizations who provide those platforms for session tracking. So just, go for that. And again, if it's more than 50 people, also look for platforms that have both the session tracking and the matching algorithm. So those are Kronos, and together are doing that. So if I'm coming back to behavioral change, like if we have a group of people and we want them to change in terms of behavior, then again, the main question comes, do they need some advice from people who've been there? Or is it more like a more open-ended process if it's, we already talked about the mentoring, but if they don't need any advice, you can go to the coaching route. And then you can check, like, do you want to support them individually, or do you want to support them as a group or as a team? And then again comes, there can be a digital platform to support the process. But then the human element changes. Sometimes it's a one-on-one coaching process. Sometimes it's group coaching, and sometimes it's team coaching. To give you the difference between group coaching and team coaching, sometimes it's a little bit confused. Team coaching is for people who are working together. So let's say if you want to develop your sales team, if you want to give coaching support to your sales team, then it would be a team coaching process for them. But if you want to, let's say, develop your first line managers all together at the same time, then it's a group coaching process. They're not necessarily in a team dynamic with each other, but they're going through the same process altogether. So that's the difference between group coaching and team coaching. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I had a question. So at an earlier point, you mentioned I wouldn't advise an internal team coach to do
team coaching.
Yeah, to do the team coaching. When would you advise to have an internal team coach do team coaching?
That would be only if, let's say, some organizations are running projects globally, and there is this person sitting in the Germany office that really doesn't know anybody in this group. Then that would make sense. Then it would be totally okay. For instance, in PwC, they used to do the leadership development processes for certain groups of leaders by internal coaches. So it was also like, there was also still the team dynamic. They knew about the organization, but they didn't necessarily know each individual in that team. So they were not part of that dynamic themselves as a team, as the coaches. But if, let's say, this team is, if you as let's say an HR person has been trained as a team coach, and there is this finance group who are sitting in the same office with you, who you just personally know, if you're there as a team coach, then there is always this question like, what is being talked after, behind our back? Or like, this person knows our manager, maybe they wouldn't be very objective. Even though you're objective, people would have that resistance. So the main idea is like, do they know each other or not? I don't know if there are any. I just saw Lena's head, but I'm also curious about Monique's idea behind it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, because for example, we're quite a small organization, so I think it would also depend on the size of the organization. But for example, we have team coaches, but their role transitioned from being an agile coach and more like a group facilitator towards a team coach. So I'm looking for the different, if there's a difference between
yes, very good point. If you're talking about agile coaching, coaching for the process, that's a good one. I need to add that into the cheat sheet actually. If you're talking about coaching for the process, no problem at all. I'm talking about coaching the team when there is some kind of a conflict going on in the team. Just going in there and if there is this team who's not really functioning because there is a conflict or something like that, or some kind of a dynamic going on there, then I wouldn't advise it. But if you're talking about, like you're saying, if you're talking about coaching them for a process, then it's also okay to do through internal coaches.
Because I think that the person that I have in mind who does the team coaching, often in the retrospectives, the problems do arise, like the team problems. So
yeah, but in the agile processes specifically, they're not, what's the word? they're not pathetic enough, let's say. So they're not pathetic enough. They just happened. This conflict just happened, and we're just talking about it in maximum 2 weeks time, let's say. So it's not a chronicle. Yeah, that's the word. That's not a chronicle issue anymore. But generally, external coaches are called when there is really a chronicle issue going on. So that would be a little bit, too difficult to be done by someone in the organization, because you're also part of the sales system and everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but that's a good one. I'm going to add it to the cheat sheet.
More lines.
Yay.
I also
I'm going to turn a little bit of the lights.
I also wanted to ask you, do you have any advice how to assess whether someone needs coaching on either technical or behavioral skills? Because like, how would that process look like, or how do you recommend people go about that process?
Yeah, I think in that case, the assessment centers are good. I mean, the first thing to start is if somebody's really sitting in that role for the very first time, they generally need some technical support as well. So it's not just behavioral. But if they've been in that place for a while, and you're still not sure if they need some technical support or not, I mean, this looks really like I'm under surrogation. I'm going to turn another light on.
You are under interrogation.
I am. Yes. maybe looks better. I don't know. Yes, I think so. What was I saying? The technical versus. So if the people, this person has been sitting in that role for a long while, and you're still not sure if they still lack a technical support or not, then I would say, using 360s would work. Having assessment centers would work. So receiving as much as outside support as possible, but also asking the person, like, do they really lack a technical part or not? Or do they really still want to learn something that they didn't have the opportunity to learn before? Like, basically, that's it. That's my take.
I'm also curious to hear, because that brings up a question. Like, there's two different coachees: people who want to go there and people who don't want to be there. So how? So for example, manager says, I don't know how to deal with this type of behavior. Go see a coach. And then to make that assessment, it's very difficult, to start.
That's exactly when the 360s come into play, actually, because then you receive the information from other people. Sometimes people are really open and say, like, I really need this. Great. But sometimes they're not. And even their reaction to the 360 would tell you a lot about the people.
Yeah. It's a shame that some people don't see this as a great opportunity to learn, but more as being told off or being pushed into the corner.
It has been when coaching first was around, I would say, at least in Turkey, because I started when it was just starting, but I don't know about the other countries. There was a lot of misunderstanding, as if it was like you just send someone who's really in a miserable state to a coach as the last moment of last measure. Like, even if this coaching doesn't work, I'm going to fire this guy. We're mostly sent to coaches, but it's actually the other way around. Like, why would you make that much of investment to someone if you really can't see a fit? It's generally, thinking that coaching is coming from sports coaching, basically. It's just that idea was transferred to life coaching and business coaching. Basically, champions have coaches. The others have trainers only. So that mindset shift finally is here. But some people still think like, oh, they send me to a coach, probably I'm going to be fired. But I generally, when somebody has that kind of a resistance to the process, I always tell them, like, you know, they wouldn't make this much of investment if they didn't like you. So, you know, they sometimes need to hear that.
Yeah. Although I could also imagine that whatever you just said, you know, like they go, okay, they must want to get rid of me. This is just the easy way out, you know, so that I don't have to have that tough conversation. But do you make at SparkUs, do you make an assessment before someone enrolls into the platform, whether they're for what reason?
What generally happens for our case is it's not just one individual, so it's a whole group that the organization wants to develop. But the assessment itself is based on mostly on this page that I showed you. This one, let me find that one. Yeah. So actually, this page. Of course, I'm somewhere else still, so it's difficult to go back to, once you're in the process. This page tells us a lot. If people are somehow resistant, they don't even fill it out.
Yeah.
And this page also is like, we do a lot of reminders. You know, I'm going to talk about the buy-ins, like we do a lot of kickoffs, Q&A sessions, etc. And based on all that support, if somebody really didn't complete anything at all, or just, you know, just made a hello to the platform and just walked away, then that tells that at least, I mean, I don't want to say this person is uncoachable, but at least they're not ready to be coached in that moment. Yeah. So we can also say, like, well, actually, I'm not going to, you know, invest to a coach hour for this person. So that's generally where comes the assessment in our case. But sometimes organizations also do assessment centers or some personality tests or some 360s. Then we sometimes integrate those to the self-assessment piece on the steps that they're going through, and asking them, like, what did you like about this 360, for instance? What were you proud of? What didn't you like? So making them also do some self-reflection about it, because sometimes they're just fighting with a certain sentence in the whole assessment, and they're just, you know, missing the whole part. So there are those kind of tricks we also use. But mostly, as I said, we're working with the larger groups, so it's not just this guy is not fit. We don't do that. So it just shows on the platform anyway. No. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry if I'm taking too much time to
No.
So if this is, for example, a team that's enrolled into to this trajectory, so to say. Does that also mean that the team together, that the team starts intervision, or that they, I don't know, as a group go through a coaching session, or is that all customizable?
It is all customizable, yeah. It's generally like we just sit with the organization and understand what they really want this whole group of people to really think about. And then we generally have certain, you know, predefined steps, but we change the wording and some exercises around it. But sometimes we just create it from scratch for the organization. So it's really based on what they really want the whole group to really sit down and think about. Yeah.
And how many coaching hours generally per individual
is required afterwards?
Yeah.
It really depends on the strategic idea behind that program. Sometimes, for instance, one of our clients is providing career coaching support to their technical guys. So it's just one thing that they really want. So the idea is people go through the platform, do their basic idea about their career, what they want to take where they want to take their careers, and then they just have one session with the coach to, you know, fine-tune things. So that's just one session is enough. But in some cases, we're talking about behavioral change. So it's generally, rather than, it's generally like 3 or 4 sessions are required after the platform. But you know, what generally is with behavioral change we're talking about is like 6 to 12 sessions. So the total amount is again decreased, lower. So it really depends on the strategic goal, and of course on the budget of the organization. Sometimes we're working with a telecom company, and they if you ask them, they really want to have at least 3 sessions, but they have a huge number of people, like we're talking about hundreds, and they say like, we can just, you know, we need to stick to two sessions only. We cannot really do the 3 sessions for all. So it really, number of things come together, but you know, 2 is better than 0. So generally what happens is like, we just don't give them coaching at all because they're too crowded. Yeah.
No, and thank you, because the reason I'm asking, and I'm looking at you, Anna Maria, is because, you know,
she's checking time or something.
I'm also curious to see, you know, how to make coaching scalable within the organization instead of all of the one-on-ones. Like, how would it actually turn out, and how can we implement this more into our strategy? So cool, thanks.
Yeah,
but that's the last part of the cheat sheet, which we're going to see right now.
It is now coming there. Yes, it is now coming there. So let me find that piece. Just a second. Where was I? Ah, yes. So first, the other piece of the large group is the leadership development. Share screen. So again, it comes basically, like we said, like, what's your strategic goal? Do we really want to, like, an overall development of leaders are we looking for? So we can then treat them as a special group within the organizations, what we just talked about. It can also be like, we want to make them future ready. You can give them reverse mentoring, for instance. And you can use the platforms as to track sessions, supervision, etc. One question on the chat box. Okay.
It's not a question. It's not a question.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's not a question.
It's not. Okay, I just popped up in my screen. Okay.
This was for Monique.
Yes, I got it. So it can, yeah.
I'm not sure what reverse mentoring actually is, to be honest.
Oh, okay, great. Reverse mentoring is for younger generations in the organization to give mentoring to the upper management. It's more about mentoring. You know, generally we think about mentoring as like leadership development and like leadership skills development, etc. But in this case, younger generations are talking to the older generations about why they act in a certain way, because generally our customers and also our future employees are on our younger generation, and older managers generally don't have that notion, and they just have labels saying like, yeah, young generations are very impatient. Yeah, they ask a lot of questions. So they just have their labeling and prejudices. So in the reverse mentoring, younger generations speak to the upper management about where the life is leading, basically, and why they do certain things, like what do they think about in a certain way. This is especially very relevant in you know, long established organizations where there's like, yeah, we do things like this way. Younger generations may ask anything they like, but this is the way we, you know, approach our customers. This is the way we dress. This is the way we work. And I think especially with the COVID period, they're going to need it more and more, because they all of a sudden found themselves in this future of work, which just happens to be today. So I don't know who asked the question. I just missed it while the screen was low. So it was I don't know. So I don't know if it answered their question. Yeah.
It did. It did.
Yeah. Okay. So it just requires a certain design in this case. So it's like, because there's lots of dynamics into it, in terms of like it's turning around the hierarchy. So it requires unlike the others, it requires really well designed, fit for the organization. And the last bit is what we've been talking about, is developing coach-like leaders. And there comes the main question: is there enough trust between leaders and their employees? If you say there is no trust, I always say start with a mentoring program. So managers are not, supporting their subordinates, but they're supporting some other person in another department, and it takes away the friction of being in a hierarchical position, and it takes away, because the managers always obviously have the performance in mind when they're coaching their team members, and they should have it, but it's a fine balance to not to push for the performance, but just slow down and be there for the person for their development. So if you just feel like there is not enough trust, or the managers don't have that kind of a skill set yet, and we don't trust them to hold that tension, then I always say, like, start with a mentoring program, let them try asking questions and listening to some other person in the organization. And what I see again and again, it also happened to me when I was working in PwC. I was a mentor, and at one point I had this thing of like, I know this other department's guy in depth, but I have no idea what's going on with my team members. Like, how come? Why don't I spare more time with my team members? And I also hear it happening with other mentoring programs when I'm giving supervision. At one point, mentors start saying like, well, I thought about applying these skills to my team members as well. So they automatically get the buy-in. So that has to be a training in both cases. But in both cases, we are also giving the mentors and the leaders the platform as well. We say, like, we're giving you the platform for two reasons. A, you need to learn about what your mentee or coachee is going to go through, experience it yourself. And B, as Monique's question was like, why don't they own it? And I was just saying, like, because they don't receive coaching themselves. It's like this typical example of like, give the oxygen mask to yourself and then help others. They first need to receive coaching themselves so that they can bring coaching to others. So the platform also helps them to understand how it feels to be coached. And then they do, body coaching between them. And a lot of peer support is happening afterwards. So it also helps them to get into this coaching mindset. And there is also supervision, etc. Along the way. And last but not least, is the corporate change, corporate culture change. And again, we are asking about like, what's the strategic goal? What's the main idea? Do we want to have a coach-like manager program? Do we want to have a coaching culture in the organization? Then I would say just go back to coach-like manager program. But it can also be, we've been doing this for an energy company in Turkey. They said, like, we want to have a growth mindset in the very basic levels even. So even the guys on the streets doing some, energy work. So even not white collar workers. So you can just say, like, I want a cultural change for everybody to sit down and think about their development goals, not just to write down the performance appraisals or something, but really I want them to really think about, how do I want to grow myself? Where do I want to learn? And there we provided them with the platform where people went through the basic, that visioning, assessing themselves based on the company's competencies, and based on that, and writing down, like, these are the areas I want to develop. And we just integrated the platform with their LMS system. So once people wrote down, like, these are the areas I want to develop myself, we showed them like these are the trainings you can receive at the company's LMS. And for other support, just go to, I don't know, your manager, etc. So we just integrated all that 7 to 20, 10 into the whole idea of like first starting with where do you want to develop yourself, and then just showing them the right trainings for them. And we also wrote down, I mean, the company was able to collect all the development areas people wrote down, and now they're going to design their in-class trainings based on the general demand in the whole organization. So that's also another thing that you can do. And the last bit is a corporate transformation. When there is, like, it could be like, let me just, yes. It could be a downsizing, it can be a fast growth, it can be a restructuring, it can be a merger acquisition. You want the whole organization to be more innovative. Agile culture is one of those. So there can be lots of corporate transformation. The first thing is, like, we need to create multiple experiences for different personas, just like special groups. And then based on their needs, what we want them to sit down and think about, we can give a digital coaching journey. Plus, then I would say a combination of a group coaching and individual coaching works well. Individual coaching can be an external coach, professional coach, or manager, doesn't work, that doesn't matter. But if you want the whole organization to think about something, bringing them together as a group also works a lot. So this is the end of the cheat sheet. Any questions there before I just do the, like, how do we achieve the buy-in? The very last question. Oh, you're just out of time. So maybe I'm going to go deep into the how do we get the buy-in, and then have the Q&A for those who want to stay. So when we're talking about buy-in, we're talking about two types of buy-in. One is buy-in of the management to actually pay for it, and the other is buy-in of the coaches. So there's always this, like we've been talking about, the resistance. How do we coaches, and also if you're asking for managers to coach their people, also buy-in of the managers. So the people who are going to really go through the coaching process, let's say. So for the buy-in of the management, the first thing is to define the strategic goal. Some organizations just heard about coaching and they're so excited. HR is so excited to introduce it into the organization. But if there is no business idea behind it, then it's not going to get a budget. But I also say, don't try to go for the big projects. First, start with small pilot projects, preferably within your budget range. And then while you're starting the process, set the success criteria very well at the beginning and measure for that. If you have a large group, you can, as I said, use certain technologies to do that data gathering. But if it's a real small group, just, you can use Excel sheets and everything, that also works, but just measure it and then show the success criteria. And then show the results and expand the reach. You can also benefit from certain researches. ICF, EMCC, etc. are doing a lot of research on what works in terms of coaching or mentoring, what doesn't work. So there are a lot of use cases. There can also be use cases of organizations. We're also doing a lot of use cases based on our clients' cases. So you can search for, additional support from other organizations and what's out there. For the buy-in of the coaches, and let's say people who are going through the coaching process, generally speaking, design is the first thing. Like, we need to really design it for the organization. For that, we do a lot of insight meetings, trying to understand what they resist, what would make them go through this process. And we start, especially if you're going to use technology, just start with the notion that they won't use it, and then try to figure out what would make them use it. That's generally where we start. We do kickoffs and telling them why we're doing that, why the organization is paying for that, and why not. They always have the notion of like, why should I trust? Why is the organization paying that? There's always that kind of questions. And especially if you're using a digital platform, there's always also the question of like, how am I going to make sure that there's confidentiality there? So talking about security issues, confidentiality, etc., is very much important. And even if you're not doing for a whole group of people, if you're just selecting one person, it's very important to tell this person that is going through the coaching process that it would be confidential. It would be confidential between coach and the coachee. So those kind of things really make them trust the process. And I would say, especially if you're just starting coaching in the organization, first start with the less resistant ones. Don't go for the most difficult ones. That would create success stories and word of mouth. Then they would start asking for like, oh, this person is going through coaching, I want to receive it too. I just heard that there's a pilot project, can I be in the next round? So always start with the less resistance and create success stories. And willingness is very important in terms of coaching and mentoring. So just give them the opportunity to opt out of the process, saying like, it didn't work for me. Like Anna Maria said, I started the coaching training and I decided it's not for me. It is sometimes some parts of the processes are not for someone at that period in their lives. That's also possible. So just give them the freedom to be sidestepping. And also chemistry is important. As I said, there are lots of matchmaking tools out there, but still it's important for people to know that they can change their coach, they can change their mentor. Or, for instance, if we, in this case that I talked about, like where everybody went through defining their goals on our platform, the organization said they have to talk about this with their manager. But we still heard them saying in the design process, like, I don't trust my manager to have that conversation. So we added a additional step saying like getting other support. So at least giving them the freedom to say like, okay, so maybe your manager is going to coach you and that's the company policy, but you can also receive other people's support and this is the way to do it. So that also makes it easier for them to ease into the process. Having said that, I just came to the Q&A part. So any questions? So 4 minutes late, not so bad. And thinking that we took 5 minutes as a break, so just on time even.
I saw that slide, coaching for everyone. Is it like coaching for you?
Yes, yes. Did you have the animation behind it? Let's see. No, not that one. Sorry, I just couldn't find the right one. So it was just like the hearts were think, think, think.
Nice.
So, questions, comments, thoughts, discussions, or anybody wants to leave for a nice dinner, a nice wine.
Always.
Always. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it just after this.
So I'm wondering how group coaching or like how do you perceive group coaching or how facilitated, so peers amongst each other, such as in the shape of Intervision, for example?
That's very much popular now. I just advise that people get a basic notion of coaching before jumping into it. But if you can just integrate it, it just helps a lot with the coaching culture to be in the organization. So luckily, I mean, recently we have done some, in this COVID period, a number of trainings for managers to be coaches. And in the past, it was always like, oh, we want everybody to be in the same, you know, in the same classroom and everything. And I was always feeling like, oh, what a pity, but I just want them to really learn something, go out, explore, and then come back. But there's always like, yeah, but we cannot, you know, take them away from work for, you know, half days and stuff. But of course, with the COVID, we just translated the whole program into like 4 half days instead of 2 full days. And it just went perfect because people were using, we just made WhatsApp groups to do some, you know, peer support, etc. And all of a sudden, I just received in one of the evenings a message from one of the groups, because I'm there as their supervisor in their WhatsApp group. Somebody just sent another person saying like, shall we try a coaching session? And the next meeting, I just asked them like, did it mean like, let's enjoy a drink or something? Was it just a code for that? And they said, no, we just really did some coaching. And one of the things that they said that they're going to do is like, yeah, we need to try this more. And we still have the WhatsApp groups. So they're just, you know, starting peer coaching among themselves. So I think that's the way to go, to give them basic training, give them the tools to, you know, explore it, not just say like, go out and do it, but also saying that this is an option. Like you can do peer support, you can do, you know, working out loud sessions. I think that would make them, you know, buy the idea. And that I would also add to the buy-in part, working out loud sessions. Good. So the presentation is developing. Thank you, Monique, for that. So, any other questions, thoughts? So is it a good time to end this and go for wine? Or, you know, not necessarily wine, of course. You can try anything. Good.
Well,
so,
if there are no more questions, super huge thank you, Ozlem. I enjoyed it a lot, although I knew a little bit what, you know, what are we going to see today. I still took so many notes and learned so much. So thank you for preparing this for us.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure. It just was like, I never thought about from this perspective to describe all this. So thank you for all those questions, Anna Maria, because we just designed the questions in like 20 minutes or something. You know, she asked me questions and I said, okay, yeah, I'm going to talk about them. So thank you for, you know, that thought process. Yeah. And thank you all for all the questions. Really, it's really helpful, and all the contributions also. Lena, especially as a coach, and bringing that. Martha also, yeah. Maria also, yeah. I heard from a number of you. Yep. So, all right, that's it for tonight.
Then, Ozlem, can we share the? Obviously, we're going to share the cheat sheet, but can we share the presentation and maybe also
I will share the
recording with?
Yes, I will send them all, and I'm going to add these 2 things. One thing about the internal team in terms of the agile team coaching. So that would require me to send the cheat sheet tomorrow. But I'm going to send out the presentation and everything. Yeah, I think everything will come tomorrow anyway.
Perfect.
So, good. Anna Maria, I would need the emails from you because you have the email. So you just send me the list so that I can send it out.
Let me quickly take a screenshot of everyone. Maybe just like take the opportunity to like, you know, casually